a month or so after that?
He called me at the center, and they asked if I was there. He didn't know where my house was in.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, how'd you like to go to New York and spend a couple of days on Thompson Industries? We've got some executives going up, and we got an extra seat. And I said, well, I'd love to if I can get off. But for some reason, I don't know whether it was after the strike. It's probably after the strike. I just can't remember why, but we were real short.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I'd love to, but do I come on? No, we'll pick you up out at Hurlong Field. And says, all you got to do is be there. And says, we take care of everything. Says, he wanted to show his appreciation. And he told the guys in Thompson Industries that I didn't turn him in or anything. But to make it short, the center couldn't let me go. They were afraid of conflict of interest. It might get out. And that was absolutely no.
So you never actually met this guy face to face?
Never met him face to face. It's terrible that I forgot his name. He's probably dead by now because he was older. I could tell he was a very experienced pilot. I mean, lots of time. Because I'd ask him, so why didn't you go for the airlines? He said, can't afford to go to the airlines. They were taking such good care of him. But that was an interesting part of the controlling.
Tell me about, you handled a lot of military airplanes and SR-71s and things like that. Tell us some stuff you can tell us now, probably couldn't tell us then, things like that.
I thought I told you in the other tape about the SR incident.
Not much. I mean, you mostly stayed on stuff before we were born.
Well, this may be duplication.
Don't worry about it.
Told the SR-71 flew out of Beale Air Force Base, California. That was the base. It had to be a special base. It took 36 hours to pre-flight an SR-71. And so if they went on any kind of a mission, they would have to go to a place like Eglin, Tyndall airspace that we had a lot of out in the Gulf, south of Crestview, Florida. You know where that is. Eglin Air Force Base, Tyndall Air Force Base, Pensacola. There's a big airspace out there that the military owns from the ground up, and so they would refuel there on certain missions. Well, in the Falklands, people watching this may not even remember what the Falkland War was, but it was Falkland Islands are owned by the British, and it's a very tip of South America. It's right on the tip of South America, and they wanted their independence, and the British had no intentions. The British wanted that base for strategic reasons. That's the most I can tell you about it. But anyway, the United States being with Britain on everything, an ally. So they were at war. The British were going down, and they were going to settle this incident and islands, and they needed aerospace photos. And of course, the SR was the thing, They didn't have satellites then. And so the SR was going to refuel in that area south of Eglin Field in the Gulf of Mexico, and I had a top secret clearance, so I could control the airplane. And when he came into our airspace, they would have to put a little rope around our sector, and only people with top secret clearances could be in there. No big deal, because you could look across it from other sectors. But
protocol.
that was what they wanted, and that's what they got. So I was I worked him going out and coming back. That's how fast he could get to South America and tip and back. But this SR-71 came in and refueled. It took 2 tankers, 2 KC-135s, and I wouldn't even see the SR until he turned his transponder on. He didn't turn it on till he came out of 50,000 feet. And then the tankers, I'd be working, and I'd say, okay, you're cleared the tanker frequency. One of them would have to monitor me because I control the Gulf air routes from Tampa to New Orleans to Houston to Los Angeles, all from that from South Florida. I control that airspace, and they were refueling him in an airspace between the, I forgot what they call the routes out there, the Gulf routes, and Eglin Air Force Base. So I controlled all of that airspace. Military owned that one cubicle of airspace where they refuel. And the KC-135s had to stay on my frequency, but they also worked the SR. I never worked the SR on radio. The tanker always worked him. And okay, as soon as he got out of 50,000 feet, he'd come down and the tankers would top him off for South America. And okay, going down was fine. They had enough fuel, plenty of fuel coming just from Beale. It'd only take probably about an hour, I don't know, to get from Beale, California to refuel. And they refueled him, and he was on his way. And about 2 hours, 3 hours later, he'd already been to the southern tip of South America, coming back. That's how fast they go. The 3,000, I think.
Did you see the blip moving really fast on the radar?
No, sir. No, when they turn the transponder off as soon as they hit 50,000. And you don't see nothing. The SR was either stealth to our radar or was stealth. Yeah. It always looked stealth to me, but at any rate, he came back and the tankers were there waiting for him. They had already gone and re-upped at Albany. Then I think they came from Albany. That's where the tankers were, Albany, Georgia, Albany Air Force Base. And they were there waiting for him. And the tanker called and says, Senator, they had a code name for him, but the SR is on ultra minimum fuel. And I said, where is he? He said, well, he's crossing your Gulf Airways at your aircraft altitude. We got them all in sight. They had radar, of course, on the tankers. And they said, he said, it's VFR out here. Don't worry about it. And I said, okay. I had 12 planes. I counted 12 planes under my control in the Gulf route between 29,000 and 37,000 feet. And here this SR was coming right through them. And the SR came through and told, I said, hey man, what's his altitude? He says, don't worry about it. He's got your traffic in sight. He'll stay clear. Well, he went right past the Delta. I mean, probably 4 or 5 miles, but the SR was a very obnoxious looking, it was 100 feet long or something like that. It was a very long black airplane. Went right by, and this Delta pilot came on there and says, hey, who's that traffic that just went in front of me? And I said, he has you in sight, Delta. Says, I don't care. He's at my altitude. I want to know who he was. And we had always had our air defense man in the place where we were controlling. And he said, tell him that we will have an air defense command specialist and an FAA representative meet him at the plane if he felt like he needed to know. And he says, forget it. And let me tell you what, the tanker, he came right around and joined the tanker. He just barely made it. The tanker said, boy, that was close. He said that was close. And of course, he ripped on out to Beale, going back with the photographs of it. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
All the other pilots, you could hear the other pilots saying, ha ha. You know, they'd click their mouths and ha ha. Still want to know, Delta? Ha ha. It was pretty, and everybody around me was laughing too. But it was, the SR was a very interesting plane, boy. That thing. It would have been interesting to be able to see him when he really conked, but he was already slowed down past the sound barrier. You know, by the time he got down to 40,000, probably we would never hear him because we were at Hilliard.
Is that the one that it leaks fuel?
Oh yeah.
When it takes off until it
gets full speed and expands. He's leaking. That's why he has to refuel real quick before he heads out on his mission. Mm-hmm. That's why just from Beale to the Eglin refueling area, it was a very interesting plane. I got to see one fly one time, and that was at the air show in Akron, Wright-Patterson, but he didn't do anything extraordinary. They flew him in from Beale, and he landed at the air show. That's the biggest Air Force air show that they have, is in Akron at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's where the museum is. That's where they have a B-26 that matched the serial number that I flew in the 461st Bomb Wing.
They have an SR-71 at the
at
Alabama,
Mobile.
In Mobile. That's
Yeah,
right.
I remember seeing it over there the last time we went across.
It's so tattered. All of that protective
Black
stealth
coating.
skin, is all draped off of it, all shredded on it like a banana peel falling off.
Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, but I guess there's nothing they can do about it.
No,
They had a beautiful one at Warner Robin.
SR.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're few and
Amazing
far
airplane.
between. They're all in museums now. They got one at Dulles at that museum. They may have taken it into the aerospace, but I think it stayed out at the Aerospace Museum Extension, they call it, don't they, at Dulles?
Yeah, I'm afraid with all the robotics and satellites and things like that, the great age of, the mega planes are probably coming to an end. No more F-22 Raptors. They're scrapping all that.
Well, anyway, it's about time we wrapped it up.
Well, let me ask you a couple more stories. Do you remember taking us down, or at least I went with you to see the Apollo? What was it?
Phil went.
The one at night.
Saturn. The Saturn launch. Yeah, I don't even remember. Was that one going to the moon and circumnavigating it for exploration? Wasn't that it?
Well,
it was a moon landing.
It was a moon shot. It doesn't matter. The Saturn V was the full Saturn V rocket.
It was a moon shot, but I couldn't remember whether it was one that landed or it was the one that got in terrible trouble. I don't think it was that one.
I don't know which one it was.
No, but Ricky went to sleep. We had to wake him up when it finally went off.
Oh.
Everybody was so tired and sleepy. Bob Cox went. None of the girls went? I can't remember.
No, it was a friend from your center with one of his kids, because I remember the boy slept in my lap on the way home.
It was Dwight then.
Yeah, it was a little boy slept in my lap. I remember my leg.
Dwight had a son?
Yeah, Dwight had a son.
Oh.
You remember somebody you knew was an Apollo astronaut. He was going from, I guess, Dallas to the Cape, and he called you and talked to you on the way from the air, and you came home and told us about that. And I remember we followed that launch, and it was one of the astronauts that kept joking around all the time, and he busted a $4 million piece of equipment. And,
I don't remember. I'm blank. I'm sorry. Those things slipped me.
Well,
know.
okay. Well, just in wrapping up here, can you think of any other center stories or anything like the aviation stories that are really good? You told us so many good ones when we were kids.
Well, you know, in 27 years in air traffic control, you got all kinds of stuff happen, funny stuff and serious stuff. And my worst time in the center was just before the strike. I really had to be extremely cautious and use my ability as a very good controller to handle the radical union men trying to make me run airplanes together. I was under tremendous strain then. It was terrible. I actually had verbal fights. I remember Pete Rocco was the team soup there, somewhere in there, and he had to take them to the office and screaming the radical guys. I can remember Al Jabrowski, a good controller that came out here and sat in my living room and cried. He wanted his job back so bad, and he was a tremendous controller. That was the bad part. Good parts. I love controlling airplanes. I remember Dan Billington and I getting weather before they got the radar and put the circle around. And if you got them within 5 miles, they wrote you up and sent it to Washington. That was before that time. But I can remember on the non-radar, non-approach control airports, what a great satisfaction it was to clear one airplane after another for landing through weather and without radar, doing it through radio and technique, and it was a fun experience. It was hard on some people, but not me. From that standpoint, it was fun controlling airplanes with good guys, and we had mostly good guys on the sectors, on the teams that I worked on. I don't know. There's a lot of stories. I remember working the atomic bomb, H-bomb, B-52s going out of Albany, Georgia, every night. Every night, 2 B-52s would take off with a hydrogen bomb on board, and it took off 2 because one had to go out on the Atlantic Ocean over towards Spain and circle out there and be on alert to go on in and bomb with an H-bomb. The other one was a spare, and if the number one was all okay, he would head on out in the Atlantic Ocean, and 12 hours later he'd come back after being refueled in the air, and 2 more B-52s would take off from Albany, both of them with atomic or hydrogen bombs on board. Those are times you never forget. You can how critical it was. You've all read about one of those planes that took off from Albany, went out, came back in, had an emergency, and that H-bomb's sitting out there in the Atlantic Ocean off of somewhere between Savannah and Charleston. Whether you remember it or not, it's there, and they never could find it, and they're there to this day. If I read right and the Reader's Digest, it's still there, but it's not hot. It's just the core sitting there. None of those bombs were hot until they got on their initial approach to the target. Then they would insert the hydrogen core, and the impact explosions would close in around it to ignite it. But it's still, they have an atomic core out there in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. And that plane took off from a base where I worked. I didn't work that night, but that plane. But as a matter of fact, it was probably very close to where we were at Tybee Island. Tybee Island is shown on the map where they say it could be, somewhere out in that area.
Wow, look at that mushroom cloud on the horizon.
It couldn't be. It's just a core. It just radiates, maybe radiation around it.
The core, but not the bomb itself, the outer part of the bomb.
It most likely was I'm
They're all-
positive
they're all
it was
together.
not inserted.
No,
They call
yeah.
that in-flight insertion.
Yeah.
I went through the atomic bomb course, and very secret for 2 weeks at Randolph Field, and because we were going to drop the atomic bomb.
So the bomb and the core got dropped together. So they're together. They're just not.
It was not inserted into a position where it could ignite. The core had to be inserted into the center,
Right.
and the explosive would go in and split the atom. And that was it. Of course, you know more about that in physics than I do. Anyway, anything else you can think of? It's about time to.
Well, we've rolled
Time to
3
eat.
hours and 20 minutes of tape.
Have we really?
You amaze me. 3 hours
Yeah.
and 20 minutes of tape.
It was really good.
I gotta tell you, you were so cut out for this, and it's so entertaining. You're really good, and right now you look like you're about 40. I tell you.
Okay. You must want to borrow some money or
No,
something.
No, you ain't got enough money to help me, so.
Saying all those
All
nice
right.
things.
Well, thanks for setting up all this equipment and doing this. It's a
Now,
lot of work.
when we get y'all over here, and Catherine brought a lot of pictures that I'll show. I don't know when we can do it. Maybe I'll bring them over to your house.
We'll do
Thursday
that.
night. Are we coming over Thursday night?
Thursday night.
Idea.
All right, I'll bring
I'll
the
look at
pictures
it
over
then,
there, and
too.
we'll let all the kids see them too. Catherine brought some entertaining pictures. Some of them really don't remember.
From like your childhood and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I mean,
wow,
or pictures that on mom's side or pop's side.
that'd be great.
But I can tell you about a lot of your ancestors of the pictures. She had duplicates of them. Yibby, hey, are you all right?
Well, I went into the bathroom night before last, and Walter was asleep, and he showed no signs of breathing. Daisy always breathed, even at night. Very fast breathing rate. But Walter scared me to death, and I remember just this utter fright. I turned ice cold, and I went up, and he wasn't moving. His chest wasn't moving. Nothing. And then I just kind of rubbed him like that, and I screamed, and Susie came running, and all of a sudden Walter looks up at me. Oh my God, how could this happen? But his hair just got so thick. You just couldn't feel anything.
I'll never forget Bo. Bo was back there on the bed, and man, I thought it. I didn't know what was happening, but man, he died just like that. Man,
I remember Mark calling me up, screaming, "Get over to Dad's now!"
it's too late then.
That was with BJ, what you're talking about.
That was